Hello beans! This is Lisa Pickle of Flower Child Magic, and today I'm going to show you my old bullet journal. I recently filled this notebook and switched to a new one at the beginning of July, and so I've been in this notebook for the past 3 years actually. So it's very full and it has a lot going on in there. So I was just going to do a little flip through and show you the history of my planning and kind of schedule management in my bullet journal for the last 3 years. So I had my legend with the different symbols that I may or may not use. I had this little flip out list of the colors for the edges of the pages. I didn't really end up using that, but I did make sure I did it through the whole notebook so that it's cohesive, but I didn't ever really end up using that feature. This is my index, again a feature I don't really use, and I didn't put it in my new bullet journal, but I did make sure to fill it out with the rest of the pages. My future log for the second half of 2019, because I started this in July of 2018, and this is a quote page. The environment you plant yourself in determines the flowers you produce. And then jumping straight into my first monthly. All of my monthlies have some variation of this theme. I have the calendar up here, and I have habit trackers down here, and then various boxes of lists on this side. It got simpler as time went on, and I figured out what I actually needed and used, but throughout the entire bullet journal, this was the spread that I used for my monthly. This is the weekly that I used just for this month. I didn't keep using this. But it was very interesting. I used the extra space each day to journal, and I was able to have like a weekly to-do list, weekly habit tracker, work schedule. So it's a very interesting spread, but it didn't work for me long term. This was the first realm makers in this bullet journal. I always copy the schedule of the conference with my specific classes and appointments and anything else, so it's a combination of the entire conference schedule and then my specific things that I need to keep track of. And then hotel information had my room number, had the address, and I was pitching that year, and so I didn't actually use this when I pitched, but I just had some information there in case I needed it. This was a Realm Makers recap and a July review. This is, I think, the only time I did a monthly review, which is a really cool idea, but it's something that didn't really keep working for me after this. This is the only time in this bullet journal that I tried the vertical log for August, and I absolutely hate this version of a monthly schedule. That has never worked for me, no matter how many different times I tried it, and this time was no different. This was a daily weekly hybrid. And then I just went back to dailies. At this point in my life, I did not need a daily every single day. And so something like this felt a bit redundant, like overkill. And so I had this where I could just write a daily if I needed one. And this was a level 10 life spread. and here we have the beginning of 2020. I loved this idea that each month then I wrote in random keywords of things that happened that month, but eventually I had gone too far without doing it. I didn't remember things to write down for each month, but my idea was to fill, go around this with just monthly keywords, and I thought that would be a really cool concept. I just never was able to finish it. Review looking back of 2019. Future log of 2020. I usually like to have a need and want shopping list, and then a gift ideas list, and then this was my, not necessarily a reading list, it was partially a reading list and partially like a want to read list. So the ones with dates are books that I've read, and then the other ones were random titles that I thought were interesting and wanted to remember. A TV tracker that I never used, a car payment tracker, and a garden planning section that I also never used. This was my budget for 2020, and then this was my travel spread concepts for the trips that I took in 2020, and I ended up using more post-it notes than the actual paper. This is a very important quote to me. It says, "You will never be too much for someone who can't get enough of you." I started decorating my dailies a bit more. Starting in middle of 2020, then I didn't fill out a lot of the squares that I have lists for, or the habit trackers for several months, up to like a year, I think. These will be blank. This was my weekly spread for World Makers in 2020, which was a virtual conference, but my friend and I took the week off and got an Airbnb so we could still go away, and so we did a little bit of shopping and stuff. So this was the spread that I used for the Realm Maker's schedule, and then also the other things that we did on the days before the conference. So this was the beginning of 2021. Again, this is my future log for the year. My 2021 budget, and this is my favorite budget spread. Unfortunately, I'm not good at keeping up with tracking my budget on time. I tend to do it several months late, so I have not finished logging here 2021, but in each month then I have it written in. So I have each of the months. I have my income, my tithe, my bills, and savings, which is hard to track the way I do my savings, so that's kind of not applicable. And then I have categories of personal, car, and then travel, ministry, and other. And so within those, I have groceries, clothing, eating out, and then gas, maintenance, and other things. So that's how I'm able to break down my budget in a way that I can track overall categories and individual categories per month, and then at the end of the year I can add them all up. My travel spread for 2021, this ended up just being more Realm Makers notes. I didn't actually use that for traveling. This is the first time I started using this daily weekly hybrid, and I absolutely love this layout. It worked for me for I think 6 to 9 months, and I really enjoyed this one. The only thing was eventually the days became too small because they're very narrow. This was the Realm Maker spread of 2021 when we had a physical conference again. This was the weekly that I tried, the weekly layout that I tried to go in conjunction with traveling to Realm Makers, and I absolutely hate it. But this is again very similar to the schedule I had in 2019 with the days and then the times of the different classes and different activities that I personally was doing. This was a weekly spread that I tried out, and as usual, I hated it. I usually find a system that works for me, and then if I have to change it, it takes me a while to find another system that I'm able to switch to and it works for me. So that's the end of 2021 and the beginning of 2022. Since I didn't need another weekly right here, then I used the last half of the page to write down spreads and page ideas for when I set up the beginning of 2022. This was my future log, which I only used about half of because in July I switched to my new bullet journal, but I still had things that I needed to write down that I already had planned. But in July, I switched to the new bullet journal. A version of the same budget spread, a little bit updated. Self-care spreads. A need and want list again. And then things for the house because my friends bought a new house and never ended up needing to use this space. Books and TV shows, which I haven't filled in yet, gift ideas, and product ideas. This is when I started my new weekly spread. I wanted larger boxes for each day, and I needed a bit more room to be able to write notes for every week, and so instead of having 4 weeks on a spread, I was able to have 3 weeks, and that allowed me to put in a Dutch door if I needed it, and then plenty of note-taking space in different areas. Before I fill out my budget in each month, then I always leave the box open-ended because I never know how much I'm going to spend and how long I'm going to need the box to be. So before I go back and fill out my budget, then this is what it looks like. So that's the end of the bullet journal that I used from 2019 to 2022. I hope you enjoyed looking through it with me, and maybe it gave you some ideas and inspiration for your own bullet journal, planner, however you organize your life. I am going to be doing another video of my new bullet journal. That'll be in a couple weeks when I've used it for a little bit longer, because I've only been in it for a week at the time of this recording. So anyway, remember that you're a beautiful creature, and I love you. Bye!